Hey, welcome. If you're new, my name is Mike. I'm so glad you guys are with us today. Pastor Chris is normally here speaking. He's actually at a church out in Louisiana right now, and he is doing what pretty much he does best, which is going out there inspiring other churches to support us. There's been a church that's been supporting us from the beginning in an extremely huge way financially. And so he's out there trying to raise as much resources as he possibly can so we can continue reaching our city and doing the things that we're doing. So as you think about him, will you keep him in your prayers as he's out there trying to just generate as much funds as we possibly can so we can continue doing what it is that we do here. And will you just join me real fast as I say, welcome everyone online. Can you guys say, hey, online? Boom. That was nice. Taking you guys with me everywhere I go. So we're in the middle of a series called Heartbreak Hotel. We're all talking about how to navigate through the relationships that we have in heartbreak. And what I want to do this morning is just kind of open up the idea of expectations and heartbreak and what all that looks like. And what it reminds me is there's a huge expectation that I had when I was a teenager. I was 16, just got my license, and my parents thought it was an awesome idea to give me a car. And I was like, that's what's up. You guys are giving me like keys to freedom and everything. That's amazing. So I took the plush Mazda Protege that I got with some hubcaps on it. Woo! Thing was looking nice. And I was about to drive this thing around town. And right around this time, all the Fast and Furious movies were coming out, and they just dropped Tokyo Drift. And I was like, absolutely, this is a good idea. So as any teenager, you like watch a movie, you get inspired, and then you think to yourself, can't be that hard, right? Expectation, I can easily do that. All you do is you pull the thing right here, and then you turn this thing back and forth a little bit. The wheels have to be facing the opposite direction where you're turning. Duh. So as long as you pull the e-brake hard enough and then turn the wheel hard enough, then you're going to be able to make any turn you want, and then you just hit the gas, and you look real cool. So I was like, got in the car, and I told my buddies, I was like, yo, we're about to make this thing happen. Like, you guys down to try this? Like, absolutely. It was raining. It was all wet. And I was like, even better, because now we're going to get a better drift. Right? So we're driving, and I don't know how fast I was going, but I was just like, yo, here comes the turn. Everyone get ready. And the speakers did more of a fuzz sound more than played music. So we just had a lot more going on than actually playing the music that we wanted to listen to, but it was real loud nonetheless. And so we go to make the turn, and then sure enough, I throw the turn, I pull the e-brake, I flip it back around, and then we start skidding, and I look at around, and whenever you're doing something like this, like life just becomes slow motion for a second, and then you think to yourself, we're doing it? And like, dude, this is awesome. So we're skidding. I was like, yeah, I almost kind of want to let go of the wheel and just give some high fives around the car. I'm like, yeah, this is dope. But we keep on skidding, and then keep on skidding. And then here comes the curb, and we hit the curb, and then we keep on skidding over this lawn, and then we hit this block wall, and we finally stopped. And I was like, that did not go according to plan. That's not what I expected. I was like, dude, this is terrible. And then like, sure enough, one of my buddies is like, hey, did you turn the wheel the right way? And I was like, yo, get out and look. And sure enough, we looked, and the tires were facing the right direction as you should drift. And I was like, yep, totally did that. Didn't work. Let's figure it out. So we were scared, and we're like, hey, dude, we got to push this car off the lawn, and we need to like make sure that we hide our tracks so like the people don't come out of the house and like see all this stuff. So we push it off the grass, and we push it back into the street. And then what we didn't realize was it went over grass, which obviously had huge tire marks all across it leading up to like the wall. And I was like, that's not hiding anything. So apparently, the wheel shot into the engine or the drive shaft, and it punctured the tank, and it was oil and gas. Everything was all over the place. And I was just like, I don't know if we're going to be able to drive this away from the scene of the crime right now. Like, it's not going to work. So I was like, finally, okay, I got to call my dad. I got to figure this out. And I got to actually let him know like what's happening. So I called him up, and I just started the whole conversation. He was like, hey, Pops, how you doing? And he's just like, hey, like, is there anything you need? Like, yeah, everyone's fine. And then instantly turned into like, what'd you do? And I was just like, well, first off, everyone's fine. I was like, but like, this is what happened. We actually crashed the car, blah, blah, blah. And then like, after he finding out, he asked a question like back to me, which is a great dad move. He was just like, are you totally okay? Yes, I'm totally okay. And then he goes, cool, be there in a minute. Just stay right there. He showed up to the scene, saw the whole situation, and had one question for me. How fast were you going? And I was like, Pops, come on, man. Like 25 miles an hour max. Oh, man. And I'm 16. I'm thinking, yo, I'm getting away with this one. This is good. It's rainy. It's like, dude, like this is all day. Like it's just a slippery mistake. He looked at me, looked at the situation, looked back at me and said, don't lie to me. How fast are you going? And I was like, okay, fine. Maybe 27 or something like that. There was a lot going on. I wasn't looking at the speedometer, all right? Like, get on my back. And then he's just like, finally like, you know what? This is going to get a lot easier if you actually just tell me the truth. And we finally was like, you know what? Who knows how fast I was going? This is the situation. And he goes, okay, here's the situation. You're not getting your car anymore. This thing's getting taken away, obviously, because it's not going to work anymore. And there's a consequence, and you need to figure some of this stuff out. And it was in that moment, it was a huge heartbreak for me. And I was like, man, I had an expectation that I can actually deliver something in my life, that I was going to be good at something, and I wasn't good at it. And what it ended up doing was it started like producing heartbreak in my life. And now I had a consequence where I had to actually ask my friends for rides still, and they didn't want to do it because they just made fun of me. And they're just like, haha, you can't go because you don't have a car. I was like, you guys are not real friends. And there's a situation in life that's actually true in our relationships as well. It's not just the car. It's not just the silly mistakes that we would make. And it's not just the things that we would do and thinking that we can actually pull things off that we really can't. But there's also situations that we find ourselves in our relationships that we believe there's an expectation that we have that our relationships will be full of happiness and full of life and love and care and support and quality time and just all the stuff that's going to make relationships just absolutely amazing, right? And we expect that. And we expect that there's going to be so much fulfillment and joy that this person is going to bring to us. But what we don't really expect is we expect there to be pain. We expect there to be like difficulty, arguing, but we don't expect it to be full of that. We don't expect full seasons of heartbreak. We don't expect long periods of time of us fighting and arguing and disagreeing and like being at like odd ends with one another. Like, I thought, like, oh, yeah, once we get married, Tierney and I are going to always agree. It's going to be amazing. I just have to actually explain the whole picture, and then she'll be like, oh, I get it now. I'm on board. She just doesn't understand. This is the problem. And then Tierney's just like, okay, he just needs to know that, like, what I want to do is better for him. So once he understands that, then he'll come around the corner. It's just like, and we would like look at that. I was like, I don't want to do that. And she's like, I don't want to do that. And then you find yourself in disagreements. And you find yourself now like finding the position to where you're like, I'm stuck. And I'm going to actually start defending my point and defending the things that I'm at. And now you start finding things to where you start responding to each other in those moments. And now the expectation that you had on your spouse, the expectation you had on your kids, the expectation you had on the job, the expectation that you have in life is now changing. And now you have to respond to that differently. And now it's actually producing some heartache and some pain. And you're like, this is not going how I want it to go. Why? So now, rather than actually just kind of like trying to figure it out together, or maybe like extending a hand of reason and be like, okay, let's talk through this, you actually double down on the idea and you're like, I'm going to actually make this thing work. And what we start doing is we start believing certain expectations for us. And we believe it was like, okay, if I work my marriage out and we work all of our problems out, then this person is actually going to satisfy me. So as long as our married problems like get worked out and our married heartaches get worked out, then we're going to actually start walking into this path of more freedom. Some of us think that our kids are going to start responding better to us or start getting out of the behavioral, developmental stages that they're in and start learning how to do more things themselves. And that's going to get us out of the funk of the heartbreak that we're having in certain seasons of our life. Some of us think the business will do it. Some of us think that we're just stuck in this idea that if this thing outside of me changes, then what will happen is I will find myself to be more satisfied. But what happens when you go from a season of heartbreak and you go into a new season and it just reminds you of the same season that you came from? What happened when the heart issue and the pain and the heartache and the disappointment and the expectations that were let down now travel from season to season to season? How do we manage that? How do we navigate through that? How do we actually go through this life with more hope and more joy and looking forward to the experiences when we know that bad things happened, and that was hard, and that was a difficult time in our marriage. That was a difficult season with our kids. That was a difficult time with the business. That was hard. So now how do we move into another season looking forward and expecting God to do great things in our life, great things through our life, and be able to expect awesome stuff to take place? It gets really difficult. It gets really hard to continue to have this major expectation that God will begin to continue to do great things through us and with us when we look back in our history and it just has a whole lot more heartbreak in it. So what I want to do is I want to open up the Bible and see like a story that these people were navigating through back in the Old Testament. It's the second book of the Bible. It's called Exodus. In Exodus 17, we're going to look at how Moses actually like walks a group of people through a lot of transition that they are experiencing. And so what we do here at our city, we like to speak from a position of called there and then, and also in here and now. There and then is all about what was taking place at the time, right there and then. And then we're going to break down the idea of how it applies to us here and now. So a little backstory and what's going on with these people. There are a people that are leaving this place called Egypt and Pharaoh. And what they did was Pharaoh was actually building and like starting a government and like producing something that was actually a brand new technology in its day. What they used to build back in the day, buildings were major stones. They would take these round stones and they'd put them together. And this is how they built their buildings. And it's like, as long as you can roll these stones on top of each other, and then you can actually establish your empire or your government off of this. And what they found was, if we can actually find a way to make the stones more flat and start building bricks, that would make it more conducive for our buildings. They'll be stronger, better structural integrity, and it'll actually be more developed so that we can build bigger buildings, we could build higher structures and everything so that we will have a stronger empire that we would be able to have, and we can put walls around our village. So what they did was they took something called forced labor, aka slavery, and they enslaved an entire group of people called the Israelites, plugged them into this system of saying that we're going to force you to build these bricks so that you can actually build our kingdom for us. So it won't actually force our people to do it, and we're going to get someone else to do it. So now the Israelites are enslaved generation after generation after generation. And the only education that they knew when it came to understanding what it meant to be human and how to live life was I wake up, I build this brick, I put it in this place, I'm building this empire, I'm building this temple, I'm building this pyramid, and I go back to sleep. I wake up, I build bricks, I go to sleep. I wake up, I build bricks, I go to sleep. I wake up, I build bricks, I go to sleep. That's all they knew about life. And so what we see in actual Exodus of all the Bible readers out there is when you see the 10 Commandments actually get written, what we think is that they're just natural rules and guidelines for you to actually understand what it means to live your life and be like, oh, these are some things that you should be following. The 10 Commandments were actually written to show people that your life actually has more purpose than just building bricks. So Moses was taking an idea to a group of people that was saying, all you know your purpose is just to do this one thing. But I'm here to tell you that there's 10 other things that will give you so much more quality of life of understanding what it means to be human, because they were walking around and just kind of figuring it out as they went. And what Moses saw was, oh, I can actually help them figure this stuff out. Let me go talk to God. He's going to give me some knowledge so that I can actually give to them and give them a new way of living and being. So what we're seeing is we're seeing a bunch of miracles that are taking place as well. We're seeing that as they travel during the day, there's a cloud cover over the sun so they're not getting burnt. At night, there's a fire that has appeared so that they can actually see when they're navigating. They're getting manna that's appearing, food, water. They're getting all these supplies in the middle of the desert, and they're completely getting like supported, and God is showing up all around them consistently. There's a huge body of water that separates. They actually pass through, and so they wouldn't be killed by Pharaoh and all the Egyptians that were chasing after them. So there's like a lot of awesome stuff that's happening. But now, why are they actually leaving? They left they left Egypt so they can actually go somewhere called the Promised Land. But in that moment, there's something that we all experience in life that it can be very frustrating. It's called transition. The transition period was taking a lot longer than what anyone expected. So what we get to see is we get to see how they respond in the middle of a transition for them, and how they respond to the heartbreak of, I was a slave at one point in my life. I was enslaved to an idea of living and what it meant to be human. And now I'm promised to have paradise and a promised land that's going to be full of life and goodness and freedom and everything that I've ever longed for. I'm going to step into that. And what we naturally think happens is this, that we go from point A to point B. But the reality is this, it goes from point A to point Z. And the rest of the alphabet is transition. And how we navigate through transition is vastly different than what people actually talk about and the honesty of how they deal with it. So what I want to do is I want to pull this story open and I want to look at it and see how these people naturally respond. And it's probably going to be really encouraging how we respond, and see if we can pull out some better concepts and principles of how we navigate through our heartache and through our pain and the seasons of transition. So starting with verse 1, Exodus 17 says this. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they're leaving a place called the desert of Sin, aka Lancaster, the high desert where I was from, right? Reason why I'm turning corners so fast, because there's nothing else to do. So they're leaving the desert, and it's the desert of sin. Obviously, this is not a place where it's just high hopes and dreams where everyone goes to like accomplish everything they ever like thought of. So now they're leaving this place that's just a little bit more difficult, and they're going to a place called Rephidim, which actually means resting place. It's like the idea of you getting the whole family vacation like ready to go, and you're about to go to like, I don't know, anywhere you want, Hawaii, somewhere beautiful, any dream that you had when it comes to, man, we're about to go on a family vacation. And then you start fighting with your spouse as you get there. The kids are acting crazy, and just you're thinking to yourself, dude, why are we here? This is supposed to be relaxing. I just want to relax. And everyone's freaking out, right? And it's not relaxing. And you're like, dude, we put so much time and money into this. I'm taking time off of work. Like, why are we even doing this? We should have just stayed home. This is now like a nightmare. And you're getting into more fights. You're not feeling relaxed. You come back, a whole bunch of stuff at work got piled up. Now you have to play catch up and put overtime in. And it's just a nightmare, right? Just me? Okay, cool. Working at the church is hard, apparently. I'm just kidding. So like there's a lot going on, right? And they're showing up, and there's an expectation that says this: I'm going to get to a place called resting place. I should be able to rest. That means I'm going to get something to drink. That means I'm going to get something to eat. That means I'm going to enjoy my life, and I'm going to find some peace amongst all of this crazy that's happening. And when you show up and your surroundings look like everything you just came from, it gets really frustrating. And now you're just disappointed. And now there's letdown. And now you're starting to look around and you're like, I don't like the way this feels. I am now starting to lose hope in the situation. I am now getting frustrated. Like I'm now getting hungry and thirsty. And you can ask Tierney, when I get hungry and thirsty, it's like all bets are off. I don't know what's going to happen. Right? And now I'm longing for something. Now I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, something has to change. We now need to do something. Hey, Moses, I don't know if you know what you're really doing. Hey, that was cool. Cool miracles all day. Okay, I'll give you that. That was cool. Right now, I don't know if you know what you're doing. We need to figure something out. Maybe you're the wrong person to be leading us. Maybe someone else needs to take charge and like get us into the direction, because 40 years is a long time, and I'm not trying to keep on wandering the desert any longer. I think we need to end up in the promised land sooner than later. And the response is just so typical. They respond like this in verse 2. It says this: they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? Verse 3, but the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and our livestock die of thirst? When we get frustrated in our life, in the current season that we're facing, it is so easy to think that the past slavery and the past pain and the past issues that you come from weren't as bad as they really were. It's so easy to look back and be like, why even hope? Do you know how much of a disappointment it is for you to say, if you're sitting in a situation and you're not trying, then in your guts, you just know that I'm not really feeling fulfillment right now, but I'm also not trying. So I'm okay with that. So you can justify your behavior of you not having any actions, or for you having the extra experience that you want in your life, because you know that you're just mailing it in. But when you start trying and you start putting effort and energy into your life, and you start saying, I'm going to actually try to work on my marriage. I'm going to work on being a father or a mother. I'm going to work on our family dynamics. I'm going to work on this business. I'm going to actually start giving my effort. And then you start trying really hard and you start getting the same results that you were getting. That is even more disappointing. That's a situation that sits so deep, that a heartache that not a lot of people really want to talk about, that you start crossing the road of, I don't feel good enough. I don't feel like I can now accomplish this. Now it's not just, I'm just not like doing these things because I just don't care, or because I'm lazy, or because I'm not putting the effort in. But now I have to face the fact of, can I even do this at all? Will I even find the promised land? Now that's a completely new pain to where you're like, I'd rather go back to not trying. I'd rather go back to knowing that this is just all my life is, and not even dreaming and hoping that it could be something else. And when I don't cross that road, now I'm going to be even left with more disappointment, more pain, more heartbreak. Now, how do I dream for my marriage? How do I dream for my business now? How do I look at my kids and want to father them and mentor them and like bring them along this life and teach them what it means now? How do I do that? And it leaves us with so many more questions. What we start doing is we respond to that. We quarrel and we battle. We start fighting and we start arguing. And now what we do is we look around all the external things around us and we start grabbing things to blame. Moses, it's your fault. You're the reason why this thing's happening. And we start looking at our spouse and be like, if you only did this more, we look at our kids. If they started acting right in these situations, then it would be a little bit better. We look at our business partners and be like, if you actually did like the timesheets when you're supposed to, if you did the things that you were supposed to do, then things would be better. And what we're doing is we're looking outside of ourselves and saying, if my circumstances were absolutely perfect, then life would find its own fulfillment inside of me. And that is one of the greatest lies that we have all bought into at some point. When we're dealing with heartache and pain, what we begin to tell ourselves is if all these things change, then life would be a little bit better. When I think God wants to actually open our eyes to something a little bit different, not navigating through heartache and pain, through the difficult situations and having the storms calm down. I mean, we should have some storms calm down in our life at times. We should be working on the marriage and the communication skills, and we should be working on how we're parenting and like raising our kids like in really healthy environments. We should be working with the business partners and putting the most strategies at hand. But what happens when you're just stuck in a season to where you're doing everything you possibly can and now you're stuck and there's really nothing else that you can do with that? What should your response be? The people's response is to quarrel and to argue and to begin to get frustrated and then say, we might as well just head back. We don't know where we're going, but we know where we came from, so let's just go back because we understand that. So we'll settle. Moses has a different response. He says this in verse 4. He says, then Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me. Moses does the only thing different than what everyone else does, and Moses is in the same exact situation that everyone is in. Sometimes we look at leaders and we look at this and we heard the story, or we get really religious at times and we think we know the answer with how could the Israelites ever respond like that? Why don't you act more like Moses sometimes when it's so much easier and it makes way more sense to me to respond like the Israelites than it does to Moses. Moses is seeing miracles take place, and what I would say is this: you would think he would have another answer. Take the same stick, hit the same rock, hit the water. I don't care what you hit something. Right? Like something has to happen. You've seen too many things take place, but Moses still doesn't have an answer. How does the man leading thousands, hundreds of thousands of people not have a response to a very similar situation? It's real easy to get frustrated at that, but there's something to be said about a dependence on God in moments, in fresh moments, in current seasons of life, to saying, I don't have the answers and I don't know if I ever will. God, you need to. God, speak to me, and I need to, because if you can speak to me, then I will do what it is that you say to me. And I need to create space. I need to begin to talk to you. I need to allow you to say something to me and begin to cry out saying that I have no idea how to handle this situation. I don't know what to do with my business. I don't know what to do with my marriage. I don't know what to do with these kids. I have no idea. God, tell me something. And the response is very similar. It says this, then the Lord answered Moses, go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Which, by the way, side note, he reminds him of a past miracle. He reminds him of something that's taking place in a very similar situation. Sometimes God is going to remind you of the good things that have taken place in your life. Because if you're like me, when you get stuck in the heartache, when you get stuck in the heartbreak, what you do is you narrow the focus on all the problems and you stop looking at the big picture of everything that God could do for you. Some of the best things you can do in your current season is to journal and to write down all the things you're grateful for. Why? So that when you reach a season of heartache, you can look back and remind yourself of all the good things God's done for you. In verse 6, he continues, he says, I will stand there before you and by the rock of Arab, strike the rock and water will come out of it for the people to drink. And so Moses did this in the sight of the elders, and then they go drinking and then they get fulfillment and then it's all good, right? This story is not just about water. They're actually not even referencing the idea of I'm physically thirsty. It's referencing an idea to where Paul writes about in 1 Corinthians. This chapter ends, and the very next verse in the next chapter is Exodus 17, verse 8. And it says, the Amalekites attacked the Israelites. Right back in it. Right? So it's not like this thing continues and now things get better and they show up to the promised land. They're still on their journey. But then Paul, over 1,000 years later, writes about this rock, and he says the same spiritual food and the same spiritual drink that people drank, the Israelites, that thing was called Christ. Which is to tell us in the story is this, that there are a lot of things that we need in our life, There are a lot of solutions that we are looking for, but the solution to satisfy your heart and your heartbreak that you're experiencing isn't this external thing that's going to change around you. We think that if something outside would change, or if we got an understanding, or mentally would know something more, or emotionally would respond better, or use our tools better in our relationships, that things would start making more sense, when the reality is this, that the thing that's going to satisfy your soul is God. This drink isn't just this drink that we're just drinking and be like, oh, I'm good now, so that when I'm thirsty in a couple hours, then I'll take another drink. This is a drink that's saying I'm going to be satisfied and God's going to meet my spiritual needs. The dryness of my soul, the dryness of my purpose, the dryness of my business, the dryness of my passion, the dryness that is in my life that I feel like I've lost because of pain. Because of hurt, I put walls up around my passion. I put walls up around my desire to protect myself because I no longer want to get hurt. And what God's saying is, put those walls back down and let me begin to interact with you. Let me speak to you. Let me speak to the needs of your heart. Because sometimes what we think in our life is this. We think that we need a miracle from God. And these people were surrounded with miracles and it still didn't change the heart. But the thing that will change your heart isn't a miracle from God. It's just God, period. There's not this idea in our life that says that we need to walk around and be like, Lord, change everything around me and therefore I will find fulfillment. But maybe there's a way of living that just says, God, what if nothing changed around me? Could you change something within me so I can see the world around me differently? That is the gospel at hand. That's the freedom. That now is not just something that we are now victims to the life that we live. Now we are empowered to walk around and be like, God, because of Jesus, because of the cross, because of the perpetuation, because of everything that you've done and given us complete freedom, because of that, I now have an option to choose freedom for myself on a daily basis. That's the thing that moves my heart to be like, man, God, I'll follow you. I don't need to have the answer. I don't need to have the solution. And my heart hurts over these things. And there's been some things that have taken place in our lives that we have not caused. Some horrific things to some of us and just some frustrating things to others. And there's moments to where there's certain people that have caused a lot of pain. There's been certain moments that have done things so we want to look at it and be like, man, I wish that never has taken place. And some of our heartbreak is not our fault, but it has become our own issue. And you can respond to that one of two ways. You can respond to it by getting extremely bitter and angry and then now protecting yourself and just saying, I'd rather go back and just settle, or I'll just keep on moving forward. And this is what we know is true. If you keep on moving forward, there's going to be more opportunity for you to get hurt. But as you continue, I promise you that there will be more opportunity for you to become free and more opportunity for you to let go of the things that were behind you, the things that happened to you. And we don't serve a God or follow a God that is just going to now try to prevent things around us, but we serve a God that is actually restoring things within inside of us, giving us freedom to our pain, giving us freedom to the things that we've experienced. And our expectation now isn't that the world around us will get perfect, because I don't think that's going to happen. But now my expectation is, Lord, I believe that you will do something with me to the imperfect world that I live in. That's something that I can begin to give my life to. That's something I can teach my daughter as she walks around and be like, hey, not everyone's going to love you and care for you. And when they don't, you can still find freedom in your life. Now I can look at my marriage and I can walk around and be like, I'm not going to be a perfect husband. I'm not going to always make it right. But when I do make the mistake, I can ask for forgiveness. I can ask for freedom, and I can ask for restoration, and we can move forward in the things that we're doing. My mistakes won't hold me back from future freedoms. They're not held back from their paradise that's coming. They're not held back from their promised land. They're going to still move. And I promise you, there's a promised land in front of all of us. There's a vision for all of us of where we're headed and where we're going. And I would encourage you and I would implore you to keep moving through the transition period that we're in. That time frame is not easy emotionally, but let's speak truth to our transition periods. Let's speak faith to our transition periods. Let's begin to act a little bit more like Moses and not like the Israelites, and begin to cry out and say, God, I have no idea what I need to do, but just show me my next step. We often want 15 steps, but I know that I often just get one. And every single day I just have to take one. And then the next day I have to take another. And some days I just keep feeling like I take the same one over and over and over again. I lose my footing often. I slip often. I fall down often. I make the mistakes often, but sometimes we just need to keep on putting our foot out there. Sometimes we just need to get up, dust ourselves off, and keep on walking forward. And I promise you, you're going to find more life, more freedom. Heartbreak will not be the end of your story. Let down, disappointment, failing, losing hope will not be the end of our story. The ending of our story is that we will have hope again, that we will have full lives, that our relationships can be restored, that our marriages can be full, that the world tells us that it's going to end in divorce. The odds are that you're going to have a broken marriage. The odds is that your kids are going to go through a lot more difficulty, and who knows how they're going to end up. When I'm saying let's believe better, let's not look back at the Exodus. Let's not look back and say that's how it's going to be for us forever, because that's how it's always been in our family and our generations. But let's look at the paradise. Let's look at the thing in the promised land where we're going and say there's got to be a better way, and it's going to start with me. It's going to start with my mentalities, my way of thinking, my way of being. I'm going to look at my hearts and my pain and the things that I've gone through and say, God, will you restore those so I can give my kids a better life, so I can give my friends a better opportunity to choose better as well, so I can give my spouse a better life, so I can begin to live more full at the end of the day. And that's my hope for us as a church. And there's two simple things that we can easily do as we navigate through this in the next week. A real practical thing that you can do is this. To someone that really loves you and cares for you, you can ask them a simple question. It could be your spouse, could be a family member, it could be anyone that you really trust and you care for. Is this: as you are navigating through these conversations, you can begin to honestly ask someone, hey, when I respond to you in these situations, this is a really powerful question. When I respond to you, do you get more of a response from my hurt and my pain, or do you feel like I'm responding from how I'm following Christ? Does this feel like how Jesus would respond? Not the church, not a pastor, not any of that stuff. Hey, if we just read a couple stories of Christ and just pull a character out and the consistencies of how he lived as a human, hey, does my response to you look more like Jesus, or does my response to you look like my pain? Do I look real defensive right now? Do I look really ugly? Am I saying some real harsh things? Am I not listening? Am I not a free place to actually have a conversation with? As you bring something up that is hard and difficult, am I bringing up my own stuff to equally match that? What's this whole thing? And honestly asking, hey, what is your experience of me? How do you experience me? I'm not going to tell you how you experience me because I don't know. So I want you to tell me, and then be real open to that. And the second thing is this. Oh, I thought I knew. Have an honest discussion about your actions. It's so easy to have an honest conversation about your intentions. Can I tell you one thing that I learned a long time ago changed my life? That we judge each other off each other's actions, and we judge ourselves off our intentions. And if we flip that around, you'd actually find a lot more life in your relationships. Judge each other off the intentions of one another, and judge yourself off your actions. Because what we often do to defend ourselves is what we say to people is, oh, I didn't really mean that. I'm really sorry. You attach a sorry and an apology to I didn't mean it. And guess what? I don't really care if you meant it or not. You still did it. Does it really matter that you didn't mean to say those things, but you still said it? Because what hurt me wasn't your intention. What hurt me was your words. Well, it hurt me when you did that. It didn't hurt me that you didn't mean to. It just hurt me that you did it. So can we just talk about that you did it? And if we can get to that place, then you can have an honest conversation about, hey, you know that you do this, right? So one of the best things my wife has told me, and she ends it with right, I'm going to respond differently. It's a setup, by the way, ladies. Hey, you know that, right? Yeah, I totally know that. So you mean to be like that? No, what are you talking about? So it's a catch-22, you can't go anywhere with it. It's hey, are you aware of this? Sometimes we're not. Most of the time we're not. And it feels really bad when you're not aware. That disappointment, that letdown, that expectations, feeling stupid, that's what that feels like. Is we want to defend that. It's okay to feel dumb if you don't know. But if it's a safe place for us to have an honest conversation, then it should be okay for us to bring up to one another, hey, do you know I still love you? I care for you. I'm not judging you. I support you, and I want to do this life with you. But I also want to make you aware that this is real. Just because this is real doesn't mean that all those things aren't true. This is all true, but this is also true. Can we change that? Can we work on that? Can we no longer have that be a part of our reality and our experience? And these are just now honest conversations that you get to step into. One is reflecting, and one is finding out what is true that's happening inside of you, and one is finding out what is true and how you respond, because sometimes we respond to certain things in our life differently than what we think we're doing. So if we love each other, if we care for each other, then guess what? The job of the church, the job of friends, the job of life groups, the job of these things is to provide support and care for one another. Enough space to be honest and real. I love you, so I'm going to be honest with you. And then we also allow God to do the transformation and the change. I won't change anyone's life ever in this world, and I'll never try. What I will do is I'll provide enough space and enough honesty for someone to be real about walking their issues out with God. I will never judge anyone or look down upon anyone for anything that they're dealing with. And if someone feels that, and someone hears that, and someone senses that, then you have all the opportunity in the world to become the person that you've designed to be. So my prayer for you today is that. My prayer is that we start moving from the position of us being stuck in an exodus and us stuck in a season of feeling enslaved to our pain and our hurts, the things that we've gone through, whether it's in our relationships or our business or just personal self-induced mentalities that we have that are extremely negative. And that you would step into a season of hoping again, knowing that you're going to land into a promised land, having expectations that God's going to do a great work in your life. So what I want to do is I want to pray a blessing over you guys. So would you do me a favor, stand to your feet?